projects, many of you who are with us today. Switch Asia CFP facility will host today the webinar Rethinking Agri-food Systems through Circular Economy and Resource Efficiency, which will bring together stakeholders and practitioners across the agri-food value chain. Across Switch Asia grant projects, across development and finance organizations, and also include political actors to reflect together on barriers, innovations, experiences, on learnings encountered in the pathway along with creating agri-food sector and making it more circular and resource efficient. Now, what is of course very important is that the reason for us to gather today is the fact that increase in resource consumption is leading to rapidly accelerating crisis situation related to pollution, loss of biodiversity and ecosystems, and certainly to climate change. To decouple growth and well-being from environmental degradation and resource overconsumption, we have to shift from linear to circular models of development. Now, food and nutrition, along with building area and area of transportation, is one of the key areas where challenge of resource pollution and well-being can be and should be addressed. And this is our conversation today. Now, the circular economy offers a framework in which the value of materials, parts, and value of products remains for as long as possible within the production and consumption system. Circular economy is a system driven by interconnected strategies and innovations. You can see it on the slide, which is in front of us today. And it is to say that to achieve circular economy, we need to apply the circular strategies that corresponds at the same time to the goals of sustainable consumption and production. What it means is that we are aiming at renewable and less harmful materials, what we call resource switch, that we are aiming at perpetual, ideally speaking, use and reuse of materials, products and their components within production and consumption system, what we call here circularity of resources. And it means that we aim at minimizing waste generation through better design, efficiency of production, efficiency of use, and efficiency of consumption, what we in this context call resource efficiency. Achieving circular strategies depends on innovations, naturally, in materials, technologies, in business models, in consumption models. And all circular economy strategies and innovations must be taken into consideration during the different steps along life cycle, from selection of materials to design of a product, to design of a service, to distribution, use, and certainly end of life management. Finally, and importantly, the acceptance and implementation of what we call uptake of circular economy strategies will require enablers. And under enablers, we mean appropriate policies, markets, functional education system, capacity building. And this is the circular economy ecosystem in which we see operations that where public and private organizations need to function to create a difference. And this is the framework in front of us, which will guide our discussion today. In fact, this is a reflection of the whole structure of the webinar today. Circular economy philosophy and structure and strategy rapidly evolving, certainly in many regions, and Green Deal of the European Commission leads policies and practices of circular economy in Europe and globally. And this is my distinct pleasure to give a floor now to Mr. Miroslav Božič, EU representatives and representative of the Director General of International Partnership, to talk with us about key EU policies related to circular economy and food. Miroslav, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zinaida. Dear participants, speakers, panelists, warm greeting to all, both Asia and in Asia and Europe. And indeed, as a agri-food co-desk for Switch Asia in Director General International Partnership of the European Commission, it is indeed my pleasure and honor to welcome you all to this agri-food webinar. It's the second one in series. I believe most of you have participated also in the first one. And at that time, I also said that agri-food sector really features prominently in the Switch Asia. If you look at the analysis of the circular economy of the grants contributing to circular economy, agri-food came also at the top. Also, if you look at the number of grants that have been allocated in the last Switch Asia call, the most of them was in agri-food sectors. So really it's featured prominently. And also with this, I would also congratulate to the new grant implementers in agri-food area. We do count on your innovative solutions that are you about to test and prepare, and also to prepare the ground business case for their upscaling. This is very, very important for us. It's their upscaling. We have to increase the impact. So on the EU policy framework, we are all very well aware of the EU Green Deal. Basically, it is a guidance policy priority of the current European Commission, and as such, it is to be taken into account in all relevant EU policies, whether internal or external. Launched in December 2019, it is a European Green Deal is a growth strategy where the EU member states are committed to no net emissions by 2050, and economic growth is decoupled by resource use. Thus, it is rightly called a strategy for sustainable growth. Unsurprisingly, topic of this webinar, circular economy and resource efficient agri-food system, is at the heart of the European Green Deal, with EU Farm to Fork strategy and circular economy action plan being at the forefront as one of its main building blocks. If you look at the EU Circular Economy Action Plan, it spells out, well, a name says by itself its relevance for this seminar. The action plan spells out legislative and non-legislative measures and initiative that will facilitate EU's transition to circular economy, and as such, reduce pressure on natural resources and create sustainable growth and jobs. Thus, it's about reconciling environmental, economic, and social dimension of sustainability. It also announces initiatives along the entire life cycle of the products. Zineda was also mentioning these aspects. It targets how products are designed, promotes, of course, circular economy processes, and encourages sustainable consumption, while also ensure that waste is prevented and resources used are kept in the economy for as long as possible. You see, it fits perfectly with the definition Zineda provided a bit earlier. For the updates, please refer to the link on the slide, so you will see the latest developments. You can find them there. If you look at the European Farm to Fork strategy, basically the objectives are very well aligned. It aims to, with the Circular Economy Action Plan and the Green Deal, of course, it aims to reduce the environmental and climate footprint of the EU food system and strengthen its resilience, and also to ensure food security in the face of climate change and biodiversity loss, while also leading a global sustainable food system transition and tapping into new opportunities. So basically, it's clear if you look at the overall fund strategy and relevance for the circular economy approaches for the goals, it's clear circular economy is essential for reducing environmental and climate footprint. It's essential to make a global sustainable transition. It also opens up to the new opportunities, and at the same time, certainly circular economy has an essential role to play in creating more robust and resilient food systems. What is important, basically, it also shows that the Farm to Fork strategy fully integrates circular economy principle
Miro, we have lost you. Can you try to reconnect? Yes, we have lost Miro momentarily. So I think we could jump to the session one. Zinaida, I will give you back the voice.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. When Miro comes back, we will get him as part of our speakers during the session one. And their participants, their colleagues, welcome to this session. As I mentioned before, the whole structure of this webinar is arranged around different blocks of circular economy ecosystem as we see it together with our stakeholders. In other words, it has three dimensions. One of them is focusing on the strategies, circular strategies. This is what we are going to talk about. The second one is going to be focusing on various innovations with focus in particular on technical innovation as well as business innovations which facilitate circularity. And a final session would be focusing on our enablers which facilitate uptake and upscale of innovative practices in the area of circular economy and agri-food systems. In other words, focusing on policies, focusing on financial instruments, focusing on education and capacity building. And so we, together with two distinct speakers, and when Miroslav, representative of the EU, joins us also with him, we are speaking about catalyzing the transitions towards circular economy, focusing on the strategies. Now, it is my pleasure to present our two speakers. Mr. James Lomax represents Food Systems and Agriculture Advisory for the United Nations Environmental Programme. He is part of the Biodiversity and Land Management Branch, Ecosystem Division, and he's also working with United Nations Food System Summit Secretariat. As such, Mr. Lomax also is, of course, extremely well briefed about most recent developments in this area. And our second panelist for this session is Mr. Uran Chikerbayev, who is the head of Department of Cluster Development of the Ministry of Agriculture in Kyrgyz Republic. And Mr. Uran Chikerbayev is able to tell us what is happening at the level of the national activities, policies, and initiatives. So we have a very fortunate combination of the global and national happening in the area. And for two of our panelists, I'm going to ask two questions simultaneously and allow them to speak with emphasis on one or another or both. And the first question would be, what is, from your perspective, James and Uran, from the perspective of your experience and your organizations, what is the potential of circular economy to turning agri-food system towards being more sustainable? And the second question would be a question about some of the current policies and practices which were based on the circular economy perspective, again, from the area of your work, globally or nationally. May I just ask Mr. James Lomax to take the floor, please?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me and see me? I presume you can. Great stuff. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's a huge honor to be here. And in fact, I think I was in the previous one that we had as well. So undoubtedly, the idea of circularity in general is a very noble one and an important one and something that's needed. And in fact, what I tend to do in my job is I tend to look at these buzzwords we come up with, whether it's circularity or resource efficiency or ecosystem integrity, and I sort of tend to think, okay, so in fact, what is it that we're asking, and how really does it define what we're trying to do now? Now, the reason I ask that is because we are in a situation where our food system has got to a point where we have to look back at how we used to do things as a guide to how we should be doing things in the future. And the reason circularity is an important word is because our food systems, and in fact our economies, have become quite linear. Whereas if you look at 2 or 3 or even just 1 generation ago, things like manufacturing and especially food systems were quite circular anyway. So what does what does circularity in food systems mean? Well, for me, it means, of course, pre-farm gate, so on the farm. How do we make sure that we make the most of nutrients, make the most of waste, make the most of production systems? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is post-farm gate. How do we make sure that there is no waste and that we create a healthy environment for people to consume properly, the right amounts, and to make sure that if there is any spillover or spillage, or there's overproduction, for example, that can then be redistributed to those in need. But just for a minute, I'd like to focus on why we're in this position, in the first place. Now, our food system has gone from what was naturally, I think, a circular system where farmers had livestock in their systems. That livestock could either consume the waste and reproduce and produce manure that could then recycle those nutrients back into the land. And I think we're in a situation now where that hasn't happened, because the food system currently demands more volume of certain crops. So the diversity of what we produce is simply not being demanded yet by the food system. And I don't think it's consumers that are demanding this. It is if you like, it's the food system itself. So we've got to sort of look at the system itself, and we have to say, right, so how do we look at what we have and create a more circular, more regenerative, and more sustainable model than we currently have? So there are 3 or 4 ways that we can do that. The first way is that we can look at how we produce food. And that is, for example, I'm sure we've seen it, that now our food system is made up of farmers that do 1 or 2 crops. Now, for various reasons, through economies of scale, through policy, etc., policy focus on particular crops, the mixed farming element is leaving us. So therefore, the ability, if you like, to recreate the sort of circular models of before, which is about nutrient recycling, etc., is not really there anymore. So if we can't do it on farm, can we do that at the landscape level? Now, there are things you can do. You can bring livestock back onto land, and those are things that we're starting to look again about how we can start to kind of mimic that natural process of nutrient recycling. The other one is very much looking at food waste. We know that food waste is a complete moral dilemma, and it's a conundrum. And again, it's the linear nature of our food system that's based on production and very long supply chains. So how can we address that and make sure that we use food that goes to humans first, then it goes to animals, then it goes to waste? So by using the food waste hierarchy, we can very much understand how that can be dealt with, so that also, you know, we can understand that anything that is left over, or if there's any kind of spillage or spillover, then we can make sure that that is recycled. And then the third thing is very much about what we eat and how we eat that, making sure that this issue of One Health as well is brought in, to make sure that what we are producing is good for people, good for planet, and good for animals and farmers. So of course, you mentioned this, the enabling conditions are critical. Farmers are locked in almost always by policies and also by finance. So we have to work with private finance, we have to work with public finance to make sure that we can bring diversity back into the food system. Diversity in diets, diversity in farming is very good for then biological diversity. It's very good for dietary diversity. And also it makes sure that farmers can, if you like, bring back this circularity on the farm. And then the last point is very much about governance. How can we generate and or jump on the back, piggyback on the Food Systems Summit, where 100+ countries put together their national food systems pathways. So we have very significant processes that are happening at the country level, at the regional level, that we can very much piggyback onto. The Food Systems Summit was an excellent thing. It really elevated this discourse of systems thinking, but it only went so far. So we have to now push that agenda further. So in conclusion, circularity is very important. I would urge us not to talk about circularity without talking about food systems. I find that we tend to get rather siloed in our thinking when it comes to resource efficiency. If we're looking at food systems, in fact, we need to be focusing on the Rio Conventions. Actually, we need to be focusing on how do we mitigate and adapt to climate change? How do we bring nature back into our food systems? And how do we eradicate pollution in how we produce and consume food? Thank you very much. I think you're on mute.
Yes, now. Thank you very much, James. That was very, very insightful. I would like to just quickly introduce myself. My name is Cosima Starr, and I also work for the Switch Asia SCP facility. I would like to inform our team leader and moderator that unfortunately Mr. Uran has not joined the session yet. And so I would propose to Zenaida that we maybe first comment on James's arguments from the SCP facility side, and then open the floor for the question and answer session with our attendees. Zenaida, are you here?
Actually, Cosima, Uran has just joined as well.
Oh, that's amazing. So, sir, in this case, of course, I would like to invite you to the stage.
Uran, can you hear us? And can you connect your audio and camera, please? If Uran cannot log in now, maybe we can address the questions and then go back to him once he can connect.
Yes, that sounds like a great idea, Sarah. Actually, could we get Jack back on the stage as well? James, I'm sorry. because now that we are collecting questions and answers from our participants a bit early, I would like to maybe start off with a question to you. So you mentioned regeneration and bringing back nature as two key ideas and concepts on how to shift the system and how to transform the system into a more circular mode. And I was just wondering if you have examples for this, where this has already been implemented, or where this is being thought of also, not just on a small scale, but let's say on a regional scale.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we're very much at the start of this journey, right? There are lots of anecdotal examples. One of them being, for example, there are examples up in my country, in Kenya, where we have medium to large scale wheat farmers. So I think this is really interesting, considering the situation we're in with Ukraine, whereby so UNEP is co-leading the UN Global Crisis Response Group on Ukraine on food. We're really seeing that this focus that we have on few commodities is really causing a major problem when it comes to global trade, when it comes to the multiple crises, when it comes to conflict, when it comes to climate change. So I think there's a real necessity that we start to think big. We start to think about our systemic lock-ins, and one of them being the fact that we are dependent upon maybe 4 grains, right? So we have to look at how do we diversify from just these 4 grains? That's the first thing. And secondly, how can we make current grain production more resilient and more nature positive? So one of those things is that we can start to bring back optimally a 6 or 7 rotation cropping system. That in itself is going to regenerate soils. It's going to bring genetic diversity back into our farming systems. It's also going to create new markets if this optimal way of farming is encouraged, if it has the policy backing that it needs. So that is one way, and so it's not just about a practical thing. It is about understanding that the enabling conditions have to be there as well. So we're hoping with these food system summit pathways that countries will start to think about the governance of their food system. They start to think about where to put their money, their incentives, to very much think, okay, so how do we diversify our food? And also critically to link what we're doing at the farm level to what's happening in supermarkets and at restaurants. Because often this is 2 different conversations, all right? So that has to be linked in as well. And, quite frankly, as consumers, we rarely eat grains, but we eat what is made out of those grains, right? So there are other ways in which we can produce food, because a lot of that grain goes into industrial products, which then goes into creating food, which quite frankly, I don't really consider as food. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see we have two questions already. To our attendees, if you have more questions, I think we can take at least 3 today. Let us maybe start out with the second one, which is focused on indigenous agriculture practices and whether they are helpful in circular food systems and how these can be revived to link with economic benefit to the farmers, so that they don't leave these practices. And this question is from Preeti Kumari.
Is that to me? Yeah, it's all to me,
you,
right?
yes.
So, no, this is a really great point, and I agree 100% that we have to move towards a bit of a hybrid system, to a hybrid way of producing food where we are moving from a foundation of if you like, fertilizer and pesticides. But I don't want to give the impression that that's a very bad thing, because it's not. You know, as an ex-farmer myself, it's very important that we understand that these, if used correctly, are really important to food security and very important to our food system. However, there are ways that we can move, if you like, change that that current foundation back towards a base of healthy soils, a base of pastoralism. There are all sorts of ways that we can, if you like, look back at or look to more traditional ways of farming and modernize those in a way, because of course indigenous farming is, of course, and practices are essential to what we will be doing in the future. The trick is how do we bring those into a way that the food system can also make sure that 7 billion or whatever it is we've grown to now are actually going to be getting a healthy choice and enough food. So there's a tightrope we have to walk, but I 100% agree that the elements of the traditional way of producing food, that's, I think, Cosima, what I was getting to when I was saying, look, it's not a new thing, circularity. It's not a new thing, food systems. It's not a new thing, regenerative ag. It's not. But how then do we look at what we were doing 2 generations ago, but we modernize that, and we do not just ignore and get rid of some of the brilliant chemistry and excellent products that are out there that can complement more sustainable farming. So I don't advocate that we should all go to, a purely organic perspective, because that's also not very healthy, because it depends on where you are farming, etc., the physiological conditions in which you're trying to farm organically. Over.
And of course, also the transitioning of the system is very much connected to how helpful this concept is at all. I mean, if we look at Sri Lanka, where they have just kind of gone off pesticides and chemical fertilizer cold turkey, evidently this is the wrong sort of shock to the system.
Yeah, agree.
I also have a second question from the audience, from Madina Brasheva, who thanks you for an interesting presentation, and then also asked to which extent the issue of plastics management is crucial for the agriculture sector.
Thank you so much. And in fact, that's something that came up internally within UNEP this week. So I think when it comes to food systems, let's just not talk about agriculture. There has to be a proper analysis about what we need to do to reduce plastics in general within our food system. So the obvious one is how food is packaged. So as we go to more ultra-processed foods, longer supply chains, packaging becomes much more important. However, WRAP UK came up with a study recently. If you Google it, you'll find out that debunks this idea that packaging is essential to reduction of food waste in fruit and vegetables. Apparently it's not. So that's very interesting, because I always thought, these things are important when it comes to maintaining shelf lives. So, we have to look at that. We also have to look at the supply chain. We have to look at how plastics are used when we are transporting product on planes, by truck, etc. And essentially, but in agriculture, I think mulching, so the big thing that I can see when it comes to plastics is when we're looking at the obvious thing when it comes to inputs. So how do we carry inputs to farms, whether they be fertilizer? How do we carry outputs, so harvest, out of farms? But also things like mulching, which is a way of maintaining, keeping weeds at bay and ensuring moisture remains in the ground, is that is that, and then for glass houses, etc., for plastic greenhouses. But by using it for mulching, this is very dangerous because if you are in a situation where you are harvesting with a mulch still on the ground, then it's fairly clear that you are probably going to disrupt and break that plastic, and it's very difficult to retrieve. So there are lots of nature-based solutions when it comes to mulching. So we have to move to that way, like using a green mulch instead of a plastic mulch. So it isn't an issue, but like most things, we shouldn't consider these things in isolation. We should consider them in, for example, plastic's very cheap. At the end of the day, if consumers continuously and constantly are paying less and less and less for their food, which is kind of counterintuitive given the cost of living crisis is going up, but in general, food prices are going down in general, then of course you can't blame farmers for using the easy option. So it's complex. It is an issue, but I don't think it should be dealt with in isolation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, James. We actually have a last question, but I would actually shift this one to the next discussion,
okay.
Which will be moderated by Miroslav. Thank you again, James, for so many interesting contributions and insights.
Thank you.
And I would now like to get Miroslav Bozic to the stage. Miroslav, before you unfortunately dropped out, I think, due to connection issues. And it was just about to get super interesting. So I would like to ask you again to briefly highlight the circular economy policies related to food. And also what your impressions were from the Food System Summit. Because I think this connects very nicely with the next session, which he will be moderating. Miro, are you here? Okay, so I think in this case I will take over from my colleague.
Okay,
and
thank you.
Thank you so much, James. Introduce you to the panelists of the next session in the hope, of course, that Miroslav will join us again. So the next session is focused on circular economy strategies in the agri-food sector. And we are joined by Ms. Paivan Changnakam, who is the Program Director of Care International in Lao PDR. And she is also representing the grant Super Week Coffee, which is a sustainable production and responsible and women-empowered coffee value chains in Lao PDR. Mr. Tuan Nguyen, who is the project manager of Helvetas Vietnam and represents the grant Circular Economy Cocoa from Bean to Bar in Vietnam. Miss Valeria Orlova, and Miss Valeria Orlova, who's project manager for the Regional Environmental Center for Central Asia, CAREC, and who represents the REAP project, which is Resource Efficiency in Agri-Food Production and Processing in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. And yes, so from the standpoint of you as project leaders for these important grant projects, I'm sorry, and of course we also have Anshuman Das joining us, who is program manager of Deutsche Welthungerhilfe e.V. and who represents the grant Bhumika, promoting sustainable consumption and production systems for safe and organic foods in India. And Yes. So from your grant's perspective, I think maybe it would be really interesting for us to know how you interpret the connection of your grant project with regards to the circular economy concepts that were presented earlier. So both in terms of life cycle stages of your project and where you were able to implement circular strategies, either for resource circularity, resource efficiency, or resource switch towards circularity. And maybe we would start right away with Paiban, if this is okay.
Do you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Okay.
very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving the opportunity for me to speak about the SuperWe. So SuperWe, in fact, it comes from a very long name. It's the Sustainable Production and Ethic Responsible and Women Empowered Coffee Value Chains in Laopedia. In fact, this project is one of our news project from of Laos. And we have not yet implemented any of the project action as yet, because I mean, for now we are in sort of like the process of doing the MOU with the Lao government, because the this project is supposed to start in March, just like a few months ago, officially that we signed the contract, and the project will run until February 2026. So, and then, but because of the MOU with the government, we have not yet started any project action. But having said that, the project action, it's very sort of like promote the adoption of the more resource efficient processes by coffee producers to include micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MSME, during the coffee production life cycle. So we really hope to engage with the appropriate value chains, recognizing climate change and global greener value and supply chains, which will reward the farmer for using the resource efficient processes. So during the project starting up, we will first identify the existing processing processes and market opportunity, and second, the technical opportunity that feasible for the community or for the coffee producers. And the third one, it's the training need and other support required by the coffee farmers to apply the processes needed to access the green value chain. So that's sort of the very intended of the project in terms of the contributed to the circular economy. And we also recognize that by moving this project toward the circular economy, there are two main factors that we think that we have to address and consider along the way of the implementing the project. So the first factor that we think that something has to be addressed is the sustainable investment in agricultural and manufacturing practices. So as we know, this day we have to admit that many farmer or coffee producers in the remote area are sort of like the trapping in a very low quality and low price cycle that somehow very more demotivates to invest more in the coffee value chains. So farmers tend to get to sort of like easy thing, like they plant the coffee and selling the red cherry coffee, which is I mean easier for them. But then without realizing that by adding the value to the coffee, they will get more sort of the value for the coffee. And the other point is that the coffee farmer and the coffee producers, MSMEs, also lack information about skill on the good agricultural practices or the technique on the water efficiency, and also the good extension and processing services, market demand, and also the standard for the quality and quantity. The financial literacy also one of the challenges for the coffee producers, and also they also need sort of the require more management skill. With all that, so we to address this issue, the project has identified a range of the practices that it believes will support farmers to be more productive and lead to more sustainable production through the resource efficiency, circular economy, and resource switch. So, for example, I mean, some of the activity that the SuperWe project would focus on, it's for example using having the coffee wastewater. The coffee wastewater will be used to produce the animal feeds, and the coffee pulp, the fresh one, will be used to produce the fermented animal feed, and also the coffee pulp, dry one, and the secondary processing wet or the coffee parchment will be used to produce the biochar. So this is sort of like some of the activity that we're going to focus on. And the second factor that we think that it should be addressed in terms of the moving to moving the project to the circular economy is the secondary coffee processing capacity. So as the mentioned about the system that we try to promote within this project, it will require more and additional labor inputs. This will need to be offset by either the introduction of the machine or within sale of the coffee product to value chain that pay premium process for the specialty coffee. In most cases, you know, this will kind of like require the farmer to ship from selling the unprocessed red cherry coffee bean to parchment or to the green coffee bean. So in addition to that, it also the identifying the market and also the requirement for that particular market for the farmer processing will also sort of like the challenge as well. And the project will have to assess the range of the existing buyers and their requirement, and also try to connect the buyers and the farmer together. So perhaps, you know, this is the critical point that and if we can do this well, and maybe something that can sort of like motivate and reward the farmer or producers to improve the processing. So that's it's some sort of like the focus and the planning of the project, the super project that we're planning to do. And we really hope that we will have an opportunity to share more when we actually implement the project activity very soon. So we really hope that we will get the MOU with the government very soon, approved soon, so we can start implementing like the full project. So thank you so much, and looking forward to share more later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would like to now welcome Mr. Tuan Nguyen to the stage to talk to us about the experiences with his project, please.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yes, good afternoon from Vietnam. My name is Tuan Nguyen. I am working on a project on a circular economy in Vietnam. So the same with the projects of 5X that we just received it approval from the EU in April, and at this moment, so we are submitting it to the local government for approval, and we hope that we will kick off this project at this one, and just we will do it for at least of a full decade within the next 4 years. So. Actually, the circular economy is a rather new concept in the case of Vietnam. So many people ask me, so what is circular economy? So I always find the easiest answer to feedback of the people that so everything should be and could be healthy food of something else. So this is my short definition, so let the people know that. And actually, when I'm looking at the history of agriculture in Vietnam, so I find some interesting cases of the circular economy, but it is not in that name. So that is that the VAC farming model. It is a kind of family managed integrated system that is working, depending on three things. The first one is that the guidance for the crop and vegetable. And the second one is that the water pond for raising for fishes, and also the third thing is the pen or the cages for the livestock. So it is three things combined in a family economy. So it is that model was successful for already 20, 40 years already, and now like 70% of the farmers in Vietnam is still applying it. But however, it is only suitable at the family scale, so cannot expand it to a sector scale. So I think it's interesting that it could be the case that I can share with you some documents on this one later. And now to go back with my project that we are going to work on the cacao sectors. We're trying to support the cacao sector to move closer to circular economy, and we can create some. Could be the pilot case for the Vietnam, and then we replicate the models into another agri-food sectors also in Vietnam, hopefully. And the reason why we choose the cacao, because it is that not too small, but it's not too big sectors in Vietnam. But the important point, it is somehow the higher developed than the other sectors in terms of processing technology, in terms of the market players, in terms of the supporting service available. So we choose the cacao sectors. We choose the most feasible sectors, so we can get like higher success, higher possibility of success. So this is the reason why we work with the cacao sectors. So in our observations in Vietnam for the cacao sector in particular and for the agriculture in general, it is that there is the missing of a driver or motivations or incentives for the people to make a change from the traditional productions to circular economies production, because we all that know that the people here in Vietnam, they are more focused on the economic value rather than the environmental values. So in order to make it work, so I think we need to create a motivation and incentive for the people that should be based on the economic benefits. So we are planning to introduce and to create some good business models of the circular economy practices, and we're applying it into the cacao sectors in Vietnam. So what is a good business model? So a good business model, so in my point of view, it should be, first thing, it should be a profit. It should be profitable. And the second thing, it should be supported by some innovative technical solutions behind. So in that case, we had a good business model. So the enterprises and so the farmers will follow us. And this is my point. And the second thing that I see more opportunities for us for circular economy at the production side rather than at the consumption side. So that's why in this project we designed with 3 outcomes, with 3 components, that we are intervening at the farmer levels, we intervene at the processing level, and also we intervene at the policy levels. So at the farm level, so we will focus to change the current farming practice to closer to the circular economy. So there is many technology, many innovatives that can be applied to improve it. For example, like drop irrigations or fertilizations or sustainable certifications for the productions. And also we can consider to look at the potentials of other side product of the cacao tree rather than the cacao bean only. At the processing level, so we will focus at the efficiencies of the energy use, and also we work on the waste management as well. So we can be trying to find some new technology, new options or technical options. For example, like renewable energy or solar electricity and so on. So this is our approach. I can see that there is many things that we can do in the next 4 years with the cacao sector in Vietnam. And one more important thing is that at the beginning of the project, so we will do life cycle assessments for the cacao productions in Vietnam, which it is have never been done before, because the people only focus on the value chain analysis, so like considering the economic side, but not the environment side. So this will be the starting point for us before looking for others technical solutions to introduce to cacao communities in Vietnam. So this is a lot of things we can do. And also we also invite the government to involve in our process as well. So in that case, they can have effort to promote the circular economy concept broader to the society, and also they would have to create some kind of policies supporting to circular economy in Vietnam as well. Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you very much. This was very interesting, especially also with the life cycle assessment as a starting point, as this relates beautifully to our dimensions of circular strategies, as well as the life cycle stages, which you have also referred to. So I would now like to welcome Ms. Valeria Orlova to the floor, who will present on these 2 dimensions as well, the circular strategies and the life cycle stages from the view of her project, REAP, based in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Valeria, are you here? Let's move on to the next speaker while we urgently look for Valeria. Mr. Anshuman Das from the Bhumika project. I think, to you as well, a warm welcome, of course. Thank you also for your comment on Sri Lanka. Yes, of course, this was a very, let's say, not entirely voluntary decision to switch from chemical fertilizer to so-called organic methods. I would also like to welcome you to present on the 2 dimensions from the view of your project, Bhumika, based in India. And maybe you can actually also answer the comment from your perspective, the question that we received earlier, with regards to food security, how circularity in food and agri-systems would be able to mitigate food security, which of course is still a major topic in many parts of the world. Thank you.
Oh, okay, I'll try to respond to that as well. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
do.
Can you hear me well? Sorry.
Yes, very well. We can see you
Oh,
and hear
great.
you very well, sir.
Great. Okay. So let me quickly give a kind of not an introduction, but an overview of what we're doing and where circularity comes into. So if you can notice the slide, so we are looking at the entire life cycle of food, starting from production to market and consumption. At some point of time, somebody's mic is not muted and it's making noise. Can you please mute the microphone? Yeah. So we at some point of time we are basically working with the farmers and trying to improve their productivity and all. And at some point of time, you realize that it is also important for them to take that to market. And you know, taking the farmers to the market is not that easy because we are mostly working with the smallholder farmers. And we also realize that the market is not ready for smallholder products yet. And unfortunately, the consumers also not yet ready for smallholder products. So market operates in a factor where you give large amount of product at bulk scale, and consumer also happy to get one kind of product throughout the year. So there are various challenges we faced. So then we realized that we should actually work in all the three nodes. Someone is saying that he cannot hear the presenter, but my microphone is on, I think.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we realized that it is important to work simultaneously on all the three nodes, so that we can close the link between the producer with the market and with the consumer. So the push factor for organic products or ecological products and the pull factor in the market for the organic and ecological products act in a complementarity so that it helps each other. So we started working with the farmers, looking at their production system. Our that production is entirely depending on the circular economy. We call it integrated farming system, SIFS, Sustainable Integrated Farming System, where input of one particular component is used as output of one particular component is used as input of the others, like through manuring or to other things. And in smallholder farmers, mostly in India and many other parts of the world, they have different kinds of production. They have maybe cows, they have vegetable garden, they have crop production, so many different kinds of products. So we tried to improve the holistic farm productivity, the farm productivity as a whole, not of one particular product. So we can well understand that then the resource recycling is a kind of very important imperative there. So we also looked at certification, looked at diversity, and then the surplus product are grouped in a form of collected together through farmer producer organization. So we also have farmer producer organization who are dealing with the market. So it's not a very easy ball game for a smallholder farmer to deal with the market, and you cannot expect a farmer to do all these things. So there's a layer of organization led by the farmers who can deal with the market. And in the market, we focused on young entrepreneurs. We also developed kind of restaurants who is fully running only on ecological indigenous food products. We helped on all those. Then in the consumer side, we wanted to change the behavior of the consumption practices as well. So we documented old recipes. We had kind of recipe competition. We had farmer producer interaction, regular interaction. So all these aspects we brought in together, and that helped a lot actually. So earlier, only focusing on production and only focusing on consumption, as far our experience goes, was not going to work much. So if I now try to conclude by saying the very important factor or critical points, So one very important thing is we have to look at the production from a system approach. Shouldn't be only input centric. So you just replace the chemical fertilizer with cow dung or chemical fertilizer with organic fertilizer. That's not going to work. So the entire systemic aspect is very important in production. I think capacity building of various players in the entire life of the food cycle. It's not only farmers. There are farmers, there are food entrepreneurs, there are processors, there are aggregators, there are consumers. So there are various people involved in life of food. So capacity building of all those actors so that one actor understands other pain point. Otherwise, it is becoming discrete. So farmers have products, but market is not ready to accept that, and market is looking some other kinds of values in that particular product. So until and unless they understand each other's pain point, it's very difficult. So like capacity building of all the stakeholders, and that is also through a single window service provider. So in Bhumika, we have established a company who are trying to work as a single window service provider for all these stakeholders. And the last point is very important, is leave no one behind. Like, ecological food product or organic product is not only for the high society people. We have to include small farmers. We have to take middle class consumer, even consumers in the slum dwellers. Everyone has a right to good food. And to answer the food security question in one sentence, I think it is market who has decided what food is. And there are community in India at least, and I know a community in African continent and South America as well, where there are various kinds of food. Who told that food is only about rice and corn and wheat? There are many other things that people used to eat, and a food is not about improving production, and food is not about increasing productivity of wheat only. There are many other things which should be brought into the mainstream and made everybody used to it. So I think that is very important angle to address the food security question. Yeah, over. I think I have taken 2 minutes extra.
Thank you so much. You've also answered an additional question, so this is all good. And I hear that Valeria can actually join us from the side of the REAP project in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Welcome to the floor, Valeria.
Hi, hi everyone. Is my connection working well now?
Yes, it's working very well.
Good. Thank you. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I'm going to talk about the REAP project today, which stands for Resource Efficiency in Agri-Food Production and Processing. We operate in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. This is our third year. And I would like to share some information with you regarding life cycles and stages of the REAP project that we are implementing in countries. So for REAP, circular economy opportunities lie mostly in the production and distribution phases of the life cycle in agri-food producing. So we cover entire production phase, in some cases working with greenhouses and poultry farms, right through very beginning to the very end of the production processes. We also focusing on packaging while we are working with MSMEs in countries. However, all these processes must include energy and other material resource efficiency, of course. And also raw materials and water and overall process improvement in the production. Within the distribution phase, our work is around storage areas and warehouses. However, REAP project does not consider redesigning any products itself as a core, we focus more on improving production processes of the particular product itself. And also, REAP project does not currently work with the use and end of life of any products in our project. And however, of course, in future, we would like to have this opportunity, and we would like to test some different options regarding that aspects of the life cycle of and circular economy, of course. And we do not cover any consumer awareness per se. However, this is also a great avenue for future endeavors. Moreover, REAP project utilizes some circle stages, in particular renewable resources, through adoption of renewable energy in the processing stage, and of course promoting replacement of bio-based materials. Of course, resource efficiency, which includes, again, energy, water, and material efficiency in the production processes. We focus on the shared resources. For example, we would like to have companies to share common utilities, and, for example, some services and resource recovery. For example, industrial symbiosis and composting, because we believe this is very important in our region. There are some companies in REAP project that already achieved higher resource efficiency. And of course, as a result, they saved energy, water, and raw materials. As I mentioned before, since we're working with packaging, they of course reduced packaging waste, which is a very great achievement, and we would like to strive on this point in future, of course. Some other in the process of implementing industrial symbiosis I have mentioned before. For example, some companies' waste can be some other company's resource for producing other products, and we would like to work on that a little bit more in future. And for the packaging, we are doing returnable packaging solutions, if possible. Yeah, as I mentioned before, we are exploring some opportunities towards shared resources, such as using technical equipment, for example, shared trucks, harvesting machinery, and waste treatment facilities. And we would like to have people use the same measuring equipment for energy auditing and other important checkings in the processing and production. Yeah, and for example, we also testing use of shared knowledge, and we would like to have some people who are working in one company working in another company, so expertise also can be shared within companies. So, and going forward, REAP project expects to pilot some circular strategies, such as renewable resources and in packaging and shared resources. As I mentioned before, as a service business model, for example, an enterprises can use a supply team to a group of MSMEs rather than having one boiler on its own. So it can be like a whole system for MSMEs. And it can be done for making byproducts viable or for resource recovery. And of course, returnable packaging systems. One critical point to achieve is that high level of cooperation is required across MSMEs in the region. And it's very difficult to achieve because there are many MSMEs and they are very diverse and they can be often competitive. and hence it's create a little bit of competition, of course, and sometimes they don't want to share information regarding their products and waste, and they don't want to share any production secrets per se. That's why it creates environment where we need to work on people's openness, and we need to make them believe that symbiosis and working together are very beneficial for the company itself. So, but right now, all circular economy is mostly focuses on inside work, and it's all within the control of management and people inside the company. However, we need to pursue them that circular economy goes beyond their own factory walls. Yeah, and they need to be willing to share benefits and, of course, revenues in fair manner. And to conclude, I would like to say that while many case studies and examples of resource efficiency at MSMEs exist, rather few examples of effective and genuine circular economy transformation at MSMEs happened, especially in agri-food sector. So motivating these MSMEs to adopt change in the absence of regulatory push towards circularity is another challenge that REAP project is anticipating. So yeah. Yeah, I would like to finish on this note. And sorry, I took a little bit more time than planned.
Thank you so much, Iria. You also got a comment. I don't know if you can see it in the public section, where Timothy Straker-Cook comments that it's excellent that you have managed to bring smallholder production to scale without compromising the circular resource efficiency. And I would actually like to open the floor maybe for the next couple of minutes for questions to any of the speakers with regard to circular economy. And Valeria, maybe if possible, I would like to start with you with regards to the most important lessons learned in terms of how to set up a project like this, also in terms of your relationship with MSMEs from the agricultural sector. What were the winning strategies? How you enabled this win-win mindset with the MSMEs that you're working with?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to start with the fact that this type of the project is something new for the region, and many MSMEs, they weren't familiar with this type of job and this type of help that we provide for them. And at first, they were very hesitant to participate at the project because people had the mindset that we're doing something, we're trying to sell them something, trying to, so they didn't expect this help from people, from project like that. So at first, we took some time to set up very good and very nice information materials about the project. So we had to distribute some leaflets. Also, we conducted some roundtables at national levels, of course, to work with the government to explain what this project is about. And then only after that, when the governmental stakeholder, they were aware about the project, we started to work slowly with the MSMEs. As a part of this project, we have national teams in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. In Tajikistan, we have National Business Association, and in Uzbekistan is Chamber of Commerce. So they both of these national organizations, they have strong ties with MSMEs, and they're very familiar with them. So in terms, it was they trusted those local partners, and this has opened up many doors for us as well. So it was very, with their help, it was easy to get contacts with the companies, and step by step we started to introduce what this project is about, what our services are, and we didn't push them and went for the companies and started to very fastly involve them. No, it took us step by step. Firstly, we introduced the project, then we set up the whole application form, so people got consultation first, because the REAP project is designed the way we attract technical consultants in the project, which are being educated throughout the whole project duration. And those particular people, they've been trained on how to correctly involve MSMEs, because we had trainings for trainers from our international partners from India and Austria and Germany. So because they have this vast experience in other Switch Asia project, which is MetaBuild. So the experience was there already. So those technical experts came and they trained local experts on how to properly involve MSMEs. They trained different strategies, and this is how slowly we attracted all the companies. But at first, of course, they were very hesitant to participate in the project. But right now, in fact, since it's a third year of the project, they applying themselves, because the MSMEs, they talked amongst each other and they see how beneficial our project for the processing and production. And so this is how we attract MSMEs right now. They even reach out to us already themselves. Yeah,
that's an amazing success that you have. Thank you so much, Valeria, and thank you to all our panelists of session 2. There were no urgent questions, so I would we move on to the session 3, where we speak about the circular business models and technologies in the agri-food sector. And I would like to welcome to the panel Ms. Amaya Uriarte, who is project manager of the project towards energy efficiency in agri-food cold chain logistics in China. Ms. Gavasuren Laki Galdbaradkar, who is senior manager of switching on the green economy in people in need in Mongolia. Mr. Tamal Sarkar, who is the senior advisor of the MSME Foundation in India. Hoan Piaka, who is the strategic partnership senior advisor of East West Seed. And yes, we would start actually with a very brief reflection also on business models, where it's really about which figures part of our circular economy dimension of innovation. And the innovation, of course, can happen in different sub-dimensions. If it's on the product, which can also be turned into a product as service, materials and technology, the business model, which is, of course, closely connected to the product, as well as consumption patterns and lifestyle. And in this session, we will focus on innovative business models. And I would like to ask to all panelists the same questions. So the first one would be, what innovative business model do you implement in your project? And how does it facilitate the development of the circular economy? And also, how can other stakeholders in the agri-food sector implement and benefit from these models? And for now, I would like to ask Ms. Amaya Uriarte to contribute from the side of the project towards energy efficiency in agri-food cold chain logistics in China.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Okay, perfect. Thank you for this introduction. So my name is Amaya Uriarte. I'm here representing today the ECO project that aims at reducing the energy consumption and also the greenhouse gas emissions of the agri-food cold chain logistic in 3 different regions of China. So in terms of circular economy, ECO project will address resource efficiency, and inside the food supply chain, we will focus our efforts in the cold chain logistic operations. So we will cover the logistic sector. The project is starting now. It started a few months ago in March. So, but we know from previous experiences in the sector and in China that we can find in the market many low carbon energy efficiency solutions, technology, etc. But there are many obstacles that prevent the adoption in the sector, and especially in the MSMEs. That is the main target group of the project. So in the logistics sector, we will work both with the logistics services providers, but as well with agri-food MSMEs that they keep a logistic in-house. So this is our main target group of the project, and the obstacles of these companies to the adoption of green technologies or solution. Firstly, we find that there is a lack of internal technical skills and also of knowledge. So companies, they don't really know where to look for the information and tools to move towards sustainability. And also there is a lack of resources, including both time and also financials for the investment needed. So it is in this framework that the ECO proposed a business model for energy efficiency, where MSMEs will have access to different tools to increase the environmental performance of the logistic operations. The ECO business model can be described in 3 different building blocks. The first one will enable MSMEs to measure and understand the energy consumption and also the carbon footprint of the operations. And based on these results, they will be able to identify focus action plans to improve the resource efficiency inside the business. We find that many MSMEs want to act, but they don't really know where to start. So assessing for us is a key step that can help actors to make the right decision towards energy efficiency. So in this block, we will firstly release a calculator that will be based on international recognized standards. And ECO, to improve the energy efficiency, ECO project will also provide MSMEs with a toolkit for energy efficiency, including innovative and best-in-class technologies and practices. And we will target 4 different dimensions for energy efficiency in the cold chain logistic. It's about fleet management, fleet configuration, logistic optimization, and also efficient driving. So this toolkit will be built on innovative, already existing pilots developed and implemented by the 4 Chinese research institutions that are part of the ECO consortium. So this is about the first block of the ECO business model. The second one deals with financing. So as I mentioned before, the cost of green innovation is one of the major obstacles to the adoption of SCP practices among MSME. So this block will help the companies to access to finance and suitable sources of funding. So we will firstly build capacities of public authorities and also financial institutions in the targeted regions on resource efficiency in the logistics sector. And we will also provide technical assistance to MSMEs to develop green business proposals. Finally, the third and last block of this business model will support MSMEs to access to recognize labeling and certification, so they can demonstrate the commitment to the adoption of low carbon practices. This will help, of course, MSMEs to increase the market penetration in greener value chain. So to sum up, we will support logistic MSMEs to improve the resource efficiency, firstly by helping them identifying critical hotspots and focus SCP practices. Secondly, by supporting them getting the necessary funds for green investment. And finally, by helping them to get recognized the progress they do towards sustainable logistics. And concerning how other stakeholders can use and implement our model, so at the time of designing the eco-business model, we will try to create a very high replicable tools. So we will work in other regions and sectors, but what we really think that it's needed, it's that the MSMEs dispose of a permanent reference network of expert mentors and also a strong, let's say, business support scheme, but both in terms of technical and financial support. So this will really help MSMEs to identify energy efficiency solutions, to find the necessary partners, services providers, funds, etc. So I think I don't have more time. So this is the framework we propose to help improving the resource efficiency of agri-food systems. Thank you very much for your time and the opportunity of presenting today the ECO project. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Amaya. Very interesting, and also a very much replicable model across the region. As the next speaker, I would like to welcome Mr. Tamal Sarkar to the floor, who represents the Bamboo MSME project, MSME clusters project. Mr. Tamal, are you here? If not, then I have seen Mr. Tamal before. But of course, we can also continue with Ms. Lucky from the Soge project. Are you here? Mr. Tamal is here.
Yeah, I can hear now.
Thank you, Maya. Great. Leave the floor to you, sir. We can hear you very well.
Okay, I can hear. Can I speak now?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Tamal.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So this project is promoting bamboo MSME clusters for sustainable development, and I would like to highlight the major issues, the major strategic issues which actually helped in promoting this particular concept. And the first aspect is that the selection of product. So bamboo, as we all know, is a very highly sustainable product, and it's said that it is tensile strength is stronger than steel. It absorbs more CO2, carbon dioxide, releases 35% more oxygen, and it's anti-erosion. And one of the major advantages is that once sown, it can grow for 50 to 100 years before it gets the flowering. So it's a very sustainable product. It requires very less, maintenance, etc., etc. And therefore, anything that we do out of bamboo is actually promoting a step towards sustainability. So bamboo shoots can be used for as a food, or bamboo bamboo can be used as creating of a number of products, and also you can create bamboo charcoal, etc. So the selection of the product is very important. The second aspect which I would like to stress is that circularity is promoting circularity in a big way is actually a function of a business. Unless there is any business sense in promoting circularity, we did not find much taker of circularity promotion. We are speaking as and therefore the circularity model which we would like to which we take to them is something which enhances their returns, whether it is in the form of wages or in the form of profit. And when we try to upscale this model, the challenges are threefold. The first problem is finance. So when a business person is actually working in a very small way and doing very low selling the local market, this is and is also very good. But when it actually goes to factory, that is when I promote it in a bigger way, such that bamboo can be used in a much more than the current consumption, then they require finance. The sales and getting my returns at a time which at a very easily, that's a time when we do not need much of market knowledge, because that's a age-old market knowledge. But when we are producing in bulk, and that's the time when we require good market linkages. So the third issue is, of course, when we are producing in very small quantity, the requirement and selling it at a local level with something which is not very, there is hardly any competition at the local level, because the competing products cannot reach that area. So the issue of quality also is not emphasized. Anything can sell. But when we are doing it in a bigger scale, then the issue of quality and therefore the issue of skill comes into very much into the picture. So to do this thing, one option is to start a project where we, as we move forward, we gathered such partners and we asked them to carry out this job. But this project actually factored in these people right at the very beginning, even before at the conceptualization stage, and of course as partners in this project. So we had a very strong financing partner. Now these partners are actually not doing all the activities which are required to promote finance, but their presence and their knowledge of how to promote financing actually helps a lot. So we took the partner at SIDBI. Similarly, we took a partner in the form of skill development partner along with us. It's called SEMCA, who are basically into skill development. And therefore, and of course, we ourselves had we ourselves had the knowledge of promoting markets, and all these three things actually helped in strategizing and moving towards the target numbers and the objectives. The third, another important, of course, is the involvement of local organization. Now, when we start a circularity or a sustainability movement, the project period is generally 4 to 5 years, and almost 2.5 years go in starting these things. But after a point of time, this has to carry on. So who should carry on this thing? So we need to identify local partners. So this project actually identified the local partners right at the very beginning, and we started working with them in a very formidable way. Of course, there is another project is the create policy linkage, which also I thought is a very important aspect. Yes. So in the policy linkage, we lined up and we entered into policy linkage with all the people, because it's a very important thing to promote a sustainable production. We need lots of new buyers, and one of the major buyers in our country is the public sector or the government as a buyer. And therefore, we are trying to promote a thing called sustainable purchasing or sustainable procurement. And that's an area where we are working by creating a group of 50 important organizations calling a bamboo forum, which we have created, and we are trying to push this idea of sustainable procurement. So I think these 5 aspects, that selection of the right product, taking partners who are good in financing, marketing, and skill development, and of course involving the local organizations and promoting an appropriate policy framework, or promoting the appropriate policy framework. I think these are certain things which needs to be looked into for any other agri or agri value chain product who would like to do a similar project in any country. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. This was very, very inspiring as a project, and I particularly like how you, in the end, link from the very local, from the really smallholders, handicrafts, and farmers, up also to the government with regard to the sustainable procurement aspects of your project. I would now actually like to welcome to the floor Mr. Cekirdayev Uran, because he has to leave us, unfortunately, very soon. And I think right now is a good moment, even though he will be speaking on a dimension that is more connected to the enabler session, which we will soon start, which is from the perspective of public policy. But Mr. Zakar, as you also mentioned, how these projects operate, not in a vacuum, but of course also within the bounds that are and incentives that are set by governments, be they local, regional, or national. I think now is a very good time for Mr. Uran to come forward and speak to us about the understanding of circular economy in the Kyrgyz Republic, and also how it relates to setting up sustainable agri-food policies. Mr. Uran, please.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. We can understand you very well.
Yeah, did you hear me? Yeah. Let's go on to me. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to show Kyrgyzstan at the Switch Asia platform for the exchange of information on sustainable consumption and production to preserve our nature. Kyrgyz Republic has been participating in global sustainable development processes and developed its first voluntary national review for the 2020 high-level political forum. The government are implementing various policies to promote the principle of green economy in Kyrgyz Republic, at achieving the CDG through the introduction of sustainable consumption and production approach for medium and long-term policies. So in 2018, there was the Kyrgyz Republic developed the Green Economic Development Program for the period of 2019-2022. There is 6 priorities: green energy, green agriculture, low carbon transport, green industry, sustainable tourism, green cities, waste management. So this is a unique opportunity to integrate these principles and circular economy approaches into national policies and sectoral plans to support the implementation of the 7 priorities and the achievement of the CDG in Kyrgyzstan. As part of the Green Economy Program, the country recognizes that much of the agricultural land and pastures now go through the degradation process, anthropogenic erosion due to their intensive and improper use. Around 1/4 of our postures is moderately or severely degraded due to excess load on it. Due to increase the number of livestock, the yield of summer and winter pastures has decreased by 3 times. It's especially related to the pastures which is close to the villages, intensively used by farmers in livestock grazing. So such kind of problem exists, and the Kyrgyz Republic, the population in Kyrgyz Republic, 65% of total population, but agriculture contributes just 15% of GDP. And also we have problems in terms of irrigation, because irrigation is it's not efficient, and poor condition and dilapidation of irrigation system exists. That's why 25% of water is lost during its transportation, and also almost 98% of water is used for agricultural uses. So it's important for us incorporate agricultural policies in CGG. So we have several policies related to the development green policies in Kyrgyz Republic. There is, for example, we have the law on organic agriculture, and the president of office also issued some decrees related to organic standards. We have the law of the Kyrgyz Republic related to technical regulations for ensuring environmental safety in Kyrgyz Republic. Plus, last year we introduced a cluster development program in Kyrgyzstan. So, Ministry of Agriculture right now focusing on the cluster development, and in that cluster development, many donors are assisting us in order to do it in a more sustainable ways, by using not only economical and social aspects of the development, but also environmental and green aspects of development. And right now we're focused on the development of 9 clusters. It's more related to 9 main products, which is in food security, food safety program. From the last year, we introduced that program, and plus to the concept of cluster development, we introduced the program of soft loans for the all participants in a value chain in that 9 clusters. So in order to get soft loans, they have to be in clusters. And I hope that in that cluster approaches, we especially should focus on that green policies, and also some aspects of circular economy should be introduced. We understand it should be introduced. Right now, the policies of circular economy just at the initial base in the Kyrgyz Republic. Some cases we already have of a circular economy, but it's not not regulated yet. No regulation about circular economy, and not fully introduce it in a regulation system. But we should do it as in for example, in developed countries in Europe. It would be very useful to introduce such kind of policies and methods and methodologies and cases incorporate in our policies. It would be very useful. So that's why I think it's very important for us to participate in your platform, learn good cases from other countries, and we have to incorporate in our policies. And Kyrgyz Republic now in Central Asia. Central Asia faces huge, problems in terms of climate change, increasing temperature, decreasing water resources, and there is also problems because many nationalities here live, so many challenges here, and we are pretty far from financial centers and from the access of the Kyrgyz Republic and other countries in Central Asia to the main trade routes, to the oceans, which can help us, to reduce transportation cost of products. It's very difficult, and big countries, border with bigger countries, more influential countries like China, Russia, and Iran, and other countries. So it's very important in that area due to challenges, environmental changes, to the climate change and geopolitical situation. We need such kind of reforms in order and policies related,
Absolutely.
especially to circular economy. And we have to apply, incorporate, learn something from you. We need such kind of cases, and it's very important to help us from donors, from other organizations, to introduce new technologies in Kyrgyz Republic related to especially green technologies. And we need them, and probably we are behind from other countries, but still I say that the problems were more exacerbated relatively to other countries in Central Asia.
Absolutely. I think
thank you very much.
Understanding. Thank you very, very much, sir. And thank you also for the examples that you brought. I think they demonstrate that Kyrgyz Republic is in fact already thinking systemically about these issues. And I would welcome you and all of the participants to also have a close look at the grants projects that we feature here today, because they have been also deliberately selected for their potential to scale up and also for their connection with public policy measures. And I think actually our next project, which will be presented by Ms. Lucky, which is concerned with a market-based eco-labeling system in Mongolia, is also a very good example of how to kind of connect the dots in a systemic way, linking producers, consumers, and also having a public policy aspect that facilitates this linkage. Ms. Lucky, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, good evening, everybody in the webinar. And this is a great opportunity for the Switch Asia family. And thank you for organizing this event for the Switch Asia family. And my name is Lucky. I'm from Mongolia, and I'm representing Switch Asia, Switching on the Green Economy project. And we just launched last week our project, and you may saw our launch event information on the Switch Asia website. And thank you, Sarah, and your team for circulating our happy news in the website. Yeah, so in our launch event, over 80 people gathered to listen what we're gonna do during our project. And we are now so excited to introduce our model to Mongolian local businesses in agri, food and beverage sector. So our project will be implemented in the coming 48 months with 4 different partners, with additional other stakeholders. And main implementing partners would be People in Need Mongolia and Mongolian Sustainable Finance Association, Development Solution, and Caritas Czech Mongolia. The main objective of our project is to establish green purchase digital system platform is linked with incentive procedure for producers and consumers. So as you know, this kind of work requires a lot of support and assistance from the government side. However, in Mongolia, we have enormous opportunities in the policy environment, including practical support. For example, just yesterday was held a national summit on food supply and food security, food production under the initiative of the President of Mongolia. And so commencing yesterday, a nationwide focus began to improve policies and the regulations on food supply and security. So this is a great opportunity for us to implement our activities. So within our project, our main concern is trust and traceability. So nowadays, consumers, we do not trust in what we are purchasing. Therefore, our project is going to develop a transparent platform where people can trace the entire life cycle of a product in the food and beverage, what we are buying. So by tracing this, we know the environmental impact. So this is very new for Mongolia, and together with this, we also implement eco labels in the digital platform, so consumers will be able to know the life cycles of all stages of a product. This eco labeling part will enormously contribute to enhance the social accountability on both consumers and producers. So we are very happy about these new procedures and techniques. Also, agri-food beverage sector retailers adopt eco-labeling for their products as well. There will be circular auditors as well. So circular auditors will be working together, close working on the SMEs, with the SMEs and retailers and business associations by providing tailored assistance, so that they will be very equipped, and after that they will be able to have a green zone to extend their businesses in the sector. So green financing mechanism, and which is another most important part of our project, and different standards on this will be developed and followed. So successful producers and SMEs, retailers will have financial access to sustainable production, and public awareness will be implemented to influence social behavior. Our model is based on the farm to fork strategy, where we will to accelerate our transition to a sustainable food system. So we're gonna do the holistic strategy, in each step of food supply. Yeah. So I tried to gallop, but already past my time. So I hope I gave short information about our project, and I think it will be informative. Thank you.
Thank you so
Yes.
much, Ms. Lucky.
Yes.
It's very
Yeah.
a very impressive project, and also, yeah, the just the number of stakeholders that you are engaging with is very impressive, and at the same time, the approach that you have taken is, yeah, as I mentioned before, also a replicable one. So that's very inspiring. I would like
Thank you.
to welcome to the floor now Ms. Hoa Dumpiaka, who is the Strategic Partnership Senior Advisor at East West.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Right.
can hear you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone,
Great.
for organizing this presentation.
Thank you very much, and we are very excited to have you here and hear more about your perspective on business models and how to link them up within a circular economy.
Okay, I'm completely thrilled. Thank you. I'd like to talk about 4 points about our business model as it relates to sustainable vegetable farming and today's theme about circular economy. So my first point is that East West Seed Knowledge Transfer trains smallholder farmers in emerging markets. We do this by identifying highly motivated local farmers and intensively training them to set up practical field demonstrations. Our technical teams coach these farmers on a weekly basis through 2 to 3 crop cycles to make sure that knowledge is fully ingrained. Some of the techniques that we train in fall under climate smart techniques, some of which you've heard about from my fellow panelists today. Some concrete examples of our learning modules are improved pest and disease management, improved irrigation, optimized crop rotation and intercropping. We also take this learning and conduct field level action research. We test these techniques on learning farms directly with farmers in Thailand and Nigeria, and then we transfer this learning to farmers through our learning modules. And we hope that these technologies result in a lower use overall of agrochemicals and a wider range of healthier and safer to eat vegetables. And we'd like this to be available to millions of lower income consumers, mostly in the wet markets, which are the markets that our farmers supply. And so the interesting part of our model is that the training, we work hand in hand with the company to identify locations that have high market potential. And these trainings catalyze competitive agro input markets in areas in need of economic development. My second point is on data and data solutions, digital solutions. We collect data, for example, on farmer yield, investment, costs, income. We use our mobile app and we anonymize and make that data open source. We're in the process of making this data more actionable, and our dream would be in the future to have better predictability, integrate weather forecasting, and improve production planning to further minimize post-harvest loss. We use digital solutions to complement our existing field-based activities. We share these learnings then and data across the digital and mobile platforms. This was true before the pandemic, but it's allowed us to stay in continuous contact with farmers throughout the pandemic and afterwards. It's also motivated us to invest further in digital platforms to support farmer learning. So for example, in the Philippines and in Myanmar, we're piloting a course right now on sustainable farming techniques using something called the SkillEd platform. It works on an Android, which is what most of the farmers that we're encountering there use. And we're going to start with 16 module courses, and we'll roll these out in Bisaya, Tagalog, Burmese, and English. And we're also finding extraordinary reach with radio, especially for women in rural areas and in areas of low literacy. Which brings me to my third point on women and youth. Women, we know from our experience that women are hardest hit by the negative effects of climate change. Our projects specifically address gender concerns. We do this through recruiting women to become key farmers and community leaders. Globally, we target 40% women's participation. We use home gardens as an entry point to learn sustainable production. We adapt learning curriculum to address social barriers, build capacity for women and youth to produce vegetables year-round. And we're trying something new in Rakhine, Myanmar, which is gender budgeting, to ensure a very specific percentage of our investment is allocated to mainstreaming participation across the boards. My last point is on partnerships. Our work catalyzes long-term market development, but we need partnerships to make an impact longer lasting. So we develop strategic partnerships to facilitate market linkages, access to finance, nutritional awareness, to name a few. And I would say that finally, a big lesson for us is in the partnership development. Share the risk and bring others along in the journey. Our partnerships enable us to have a broader reach and multiply impact for sustainable food systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really like the four key points that you made with regard to the project. I would like to also welcome any questions from the audience now. Please write them in the chat box if you have any. And otherwise, yes, we have spilled over a little bit in terms of time, but I can still see that more than 80 participants are still with us. So I think what we are doing is interesting. So that's always great to know. It seems like there are no urgent questions. Otherwise, we can also take them up in the end. So I would like to move to the next session, the enabler session, where we want to speak about the enabling factors in terms of public policy, in terms of consumption and behavior, as well as in terms of markets. And I would like to welcome to the floor Mr. Jeremy Krebsius, who is Managing Director of PwC, Mr. Jack Wang from the agribusiness of SAP, Mr. Matthew McGarvey, the Chief Investment Officer of Pacific Rim Investment and Management. And I would like to start directly with Mr. Krebsius with regard to the key enablers for the circular economy, with regard to the activities of PwC and how you enable circularity in the sustainability supply chain.
Thank you very much. Quick sound check. Can you hear me? Good. Thank you. So thank you very much for having the opportunity to speak today. As introduced, my name is Jeremy Krebsius. I'm the Managing Director for Sustainable Supply Chains in PwC's ESG Virtual Center of Excellence, and I'm based here in the Hong Kong office. I wanted to take and pull together a thesis based on what I see tech, agriculture, supply chains, and smallholder engagement potentially progressing to. And these are ideas that we're looking to explore, maybe not ideas that PwC is implementing just yet. And to be honest, these are the things that we've been talking about explicitly and implicitly in today's presentations. And I'm really very happy to potentially build on some of these. So thank you for the opportunity. Let's start with a big picture, our world. We all know we need climate action. We need global supply chains targeting net zero, and we need to be aligned with the 1.5 degree pathway. But there will be residual emissions. These emissions could be addressed via carbon compensation projects. And the challenge to see is, are there opportunities to mobilize private capital into high quality offset projects? So why is this important, particularly for small scale farmers globally? Well, we already know, everyone on this call knows that these farmers are the vast majority of the world's farms, and we already know they're disproportionately experiencing the effects of climate change, which we've already heard today. There is insufficient investment in these farmers, and the opportunity, the need, is to turn net zero ambitions into transition finance to both improve natural capital and to enable a just transition. So let's think a little bit about global value chains. On one hand, you have the EU, which you've heard about already, looking at the comprehensive sustainability framework around food production and marketing systems. And the EU will use trade policy to encourage similar uptake in trading partners to encourage increasingly sustainable farming practices. This sets the stage in which some global value chains operate. Now, at the same time, we have an emerging multi-stakeholder dialogue, the TNFD, the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosure. And this is a global dialogue which includes investors and financial institutions, pension funds, business, and many others. And it has a focus, obviously, as it says, on nature-based solutions and risk management and disclosure frameworks for organizations like businesses to report on and act on nature-related risk. Now, the interesting thing is, as this evolves, it will integrate the language of nature-based risks into global value chains and set the stage to count, value, and consequently seek solutions. Now, let's zoom back into the smallholder whom we're talking about today. Now, as we think about the idea of carbon offsets and nature-based solutions, there are many challenges, we all know. And these are the projects that we've heard about today that are working on, from infrastructure to monitoring to access to technology to uncertainty and risk. And at the same time, though, the opportunities are real and need to be included in any carbon and nature-based approach. Now, technologies will be key, tech will be key, traceability, verifiability, market access, but as well as alignment with the SDGs is important, and even more specifically, a focus on actual resilience for smallholders, what we've also been talking about here today. How do they learn, share knowledge, build capacity, and the enablement of mutuality and agency by smallholders? In order to create high quality offsets, which is what we need to create, I would argue these aspects are going to be particularly important and aligned, and we need to use technology to align against them. So what are we seeing? Well, I threw a couple of examples out here, all in the public domain and all worth noting, and each has a connection to what I'm talking about in some degree. The Unilever example works on traceability with technology to enable locational specificity. The Samsung tree planting also focuses on jobs and ecosystem restoration to enable a diverse economy. The Indo food example looks at a variety of interventions with learning and capacity building for plantation communities to mitigate climate change. And the Grow Indigo project links smallholders to carbon marketplaces and enables regenerative agricultural practices to reduce GHG emissions and generate carbon credits. So those are the ideas that we're seeing out there. Now, where can technology pull solutions together? And how can it help connect smallholders to global marketplaces, which we're talking about? Technology needs to count and measure and trace and assure and verify. But the one concept I'd like to point to, which is where technology may have the broadest impact, and that is the ability to pull solutions together via the power of community and self-advocacy, getting farming communities to act together based on the best interest, knowledge, and engagement of the individual smallholder farmer. There's an interesting example that's in experimental phase right now and growing, right? We'll see. True Footprint is that. It's an example of a technology application, and I'm really interested to see what happens as it's based on community dialogue, self-advocacy, and places agency where it is of greatest value at the farmer level, which enables bottom-up problem-solving, diverse data, and ideally scalable impact. So as we think about carbon offsets, as we explore nature-based solutions, as we look to enable linkages from smallholders to global carbon markets, obviously, let's keep the smallholder and his or her community at the center and use that to enable robust, reliable, long-term impacts and use technology to do that. I'll close on that and say thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much. This was really, again, connecting the dots in a very interesting way, both with regards to smallholder farmers and then also the big corporations that work with create their markets and how these can be shaped by a cooperation of both in the end. Thank you very much. I would now like to welcome Matthew McGarvey to the floor, and hope it's working. And for you to connect us with the thinking of the financing sector and the financial world, because of course this is also a key enabler of circular economy. And as much as it is, or it can be an enabler, it could also be a barrier if there is not enough understanding for these concepts. And I'm really interested in learning more from you in how, the financial sector can take up this opportunity.
Great. Thank you very much for having me. I wear two hats. One is with a group called Pacific Rim Investment Management, PRIM. We focus primarily on clean energy projects and large-scale natural capital projects. I'm actually speaking today on behalf of a different group, excuse me, which is Xylem Capital, which is our impact investment fund that I launched in 2017 with the help of the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. And the purpose of the fund was my partner and I had a belief that having both of us spent 25 years of our lives in Asia, China, Tibet, Southeast Asia, that the Whole Foods revolution that had occurred in the 1980s and 1970s in Europe, then the 1990s, early 2000s in America was going to also impact China. And so what we did is we set about on a comprehensive survey to set up a fund focused on investing into sustainable, organic, and eventually regenerative farm and food projects throughout Asia. And generally what we found was, with the exception of China, which is fundamentally difficult to invest into right now because of COVID and other issues, we've pivoted and we focused primarily on the greater Mekong region, so Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand. Some investment opportunities and some projects beyond that, but for the most part, that's where we focus on in the time being. And what we came away with was this: it's access to money is not the general issue at the moment, which is going to be fairly shocking to most of the people on the call, because that's what everybody's sort of striving towards. It's how we drive that capital into the projects that are the most deserving and can have the highest impact in terms of converting the most land, the most impact, the most farmers, and as well as the most forestry and agroforestry space to move it from conventional over to regenerative. And so when we speak of regenerative, we talk about regenerating the land, talk about regenerating the community, talk about regenerating the soil or the ocean or wherever it is it's touching. So what we look at is we do effectively three things at Xylem. We run community outreach programs throughout the greater Mekong region. And that's webinars, that's going to be technical assistance, that will be community gatherings. We place a strong emphasis on communities. Wherever we are, we like to bring people together. And then we look at different types of investment. Then we look at accelerations. We'll run accelerators for natural capital. And then the third areas that we look at is then on founder support, innovation, investment opportunities, and then creating investment projects or investment platforms into those projects. So I'll take a pause there if that makes sense. I just noticed my timer is running -10, so I don't want to be too over that. Well, I'll keep going until somebody shuts me up.
Yes, please keep going.
Okay, please. So that says, please. I'm watching the timer and it's in red, so I want to be mindful of I'm not taking up too much space. So I'll get directly to the investment area. I think the challenge that we're up against is best summed up by a conversation I had before COVID in Edinburgh, where I was seated next to an investment manager who had, I think, $1.5 trillion of capital under management. And we're a small impact fund. And what a nice person to sit next to when you're out looking for money, which we always are. And basically the takeaway from the conversation was, Here's a person who managed the majority of the pension funds in the UK, Scotland, as well as Ireland. And so $1.5 trillion. The challenge was most of the companies we look at can't take more than anywhere from $1 million up to, say, $25 million. Sometimes you're looking at $50 million. And so these are on the operating asset side. These are companies that have gone beyond, say, smallholder. These are companies that have moved into, they've achieved product market fit. They're they're scaling, and they're looking for capital to accelerate that scale, or looking to refinance, or somewhere along there. That story basically encapsulates, a very large way encapsulates what a lot of companies operating, agriculture companies operating in the circular economy space face, which is, how do you take these large pockets of money? It could be $1.5 trillion, or it could be $5,000. How do we create basically pipes from these large pockets, which are relative, down to those that are in need? And so that's one of the issues that we focus on the most. You can't really solve this question in the short amount of time. But what I'd say is, it all comes down to the innovative vehicles that we create, which is where the public sector needs to be spending, or at least providing a lot of assistance, because that gap right there is the most expensive. It's for people who don't have money. For people who have money, it's not expensive. But for those of us who are struggling to create change in the sector, the public sector can come in and help them fund the creation of those vehicles, because that's the highest risk. That takes the most time. It's initially the lowest impact, because it has to be rolled out and then adopted. And those vehicles tend to be, there's nothing off the shelf we can apply here. The challenge that we have right now in the circular economy space is, we're coming up against the traditional investment sector, which wants to say, all right, let's take private equity and let's put it into the circular economy. Away we go. Well, that doesn't work, because typically private equity has 5 to 7 year horizons, and nature works usually, 12 years is a short amount of time for nature. So how do you create an investment vehicle that's going to adopt or come together for, or allows us to create bridges for those large pockets of capital into nature? I would argue that we're about 5 years early right now. Over the next 5 years, you're going to see a complete revolution in this space. What I'll do is, so that I don't take up too much valuable time, I'll drop my email for Xylem into the general chat after this. If you have questions, please reach out and talk to me. I'm passionate about the space, and I'm never short of words to say. So always happy to engage people. But with that, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Again, this is also a brilliant example of how with an idea and with a problem that you see, you can start a whole set of new thinking around financing and how to connect financiers with the realities on the ground. Next, I would like to welcome Mr. Jack Wang to the floor. To speak to us about SAP's experience. And as you are an advisor specialized in digital transformation in the agribusiness, we are very much excited to hear from you on this topic. Thank you. We can't hear you, unfortunately.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it works.
Okay, great, thank you. So thank you very much for having me here today. So I'm from SAP, so probably just give you a brief introduction of SAP, because it's sort of new to this area. So SAP, we're a global software company based out of Germany. So we are the #1 provider of enterprise resource planning softwares, or SAP ERP. We also have solutions in supply chain, in human resources, procurement, customer experience, and data as well. And we do a lot of work in agri-space and sustainability as well. And our purpose is actually to help the world run better and improve people's lives. Sustainability has increasingly become one of our top priorities. We not just want to be an exemplar, following all the sustainability trends and regulations ourselves. We also want to become the enabler of our customers to help them become more sustainable, because we believe from our point of view, technology is one critical enabler of this as well. So under our entire sustainability strategy, we have zero emissions with climate action, we have zero waste with circular economy, and zero inequality with social responsibility. So today, I would just spend a little more time diving into our the circular economy side of this. So as part of our Chasing Zero initiatives, our SAP Circular Economy delivers zero waste commitment by orchestrating intelligent solutions that empower our customers to eliminate waste, circular materials, and build a regenerative business model. So what do I mean by that? So a typical, if we look at the typical business value chain, it starts from the product design into sourcing for raw materials, manufacturing, deliver, and then the consumption of this. And we want to embed technology enablers in each of the value chain items to help customers to become more and more circular in that sense. For example, in product design, we want to help customers in the design phase to take into more considerations of how they're going to deal with all the raw materials. Similarly, with the sourcing of raw materials as well. So just on this note, we've been working together with many of consumer products companies on rural sourcing. So we have a solution called Rural Sourcing Management, which empowers the smallholders to connect directly with the brand who's buying the agri-commodities, so that they have, so from the brand point of view, they have the traceability data of where they're sourcing from home, the certification status of all the agri-commodities, but also from the smallholders' point of view, they got direct transactions, higher premium, and also support from the brands in terms of agricultural input support, trainings, and financing as well. I think at the start of the webinar, we heard James, and there was questions regarding the whole plastic and packaging of this. So probably I will spend a little more time into this as well, because extended producer responsibility regulations have seen a rapid expansion in terms of scope and scale in recent years. So with the increasing public pressure and focus from the network of plastic packs from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, REP, and WWF, so we're seeing a paradigm shift in momentum towards a producer-driven action. So in order to help the producers respond to the extended producer responsibility obligations and other public commitments, we launched ICP Responsible Design and Production. We've been working closely with industry leaders, NGOs, regulators, and partners over the past few years under a project known as Plastic Cloud to tackle this problem at scale with intelligent technologies. So the first product from this activity is called SAP Responsible Design and Production. It will help business keep track of public commitments and new regulations so that they can manage the operational costs associated with downstream processing and gain better visibility of material flows overall. So these insights can be used to inform better decision-making when managing a sustainable product portfolio. So managing these multiple factors is fast becoming one of the most complex challenges across the food industry today. And with this new solution, we're quite confident that business can embed circular principles into core business processes and helping to eliminate waste and unlock new value. And one of the examples is what we're doing with Nestle. So I just want to stop here since we're running short of time. And any questions?
Thank you so much, Jack. Yes, I would actually like to open the floor now to our participants, if they have any comments or any questions to any of the panelists. I think most of them are still in the call. And thank you very much, Jack, for linking us also with the potential that kind of IT systems can bring to the table here, and how they can be utilized in a very effective and efficient way to facilitate the road towards a circular economy. Do we have any questions in the chat box? I think I saw one before that I had overlooked, which was to all our presenters, I think specifically probably the grant projects. What was the role of green financing to scale up the green innovations, and how to engage financial institutions? And in case we don't find anyone from the grants organizations, I think Mr. Tamal would probably be a good choice, because the MSME Bamboo project does have a financial component, or any of the other grants. Then I would like to maybe pass on the question to Matthew from an investor standpoint.
Okay. Some of my camera is not. Okay. So the answer is that, we need to basically identify the partners in advance. And so in our case, we identify the partner, which is Small Industries Development Bank of India, and which is the principal financing organization in the country for MSMEs. And since they have a very good reach throughout the country and a very good brand with respect to financing, so we could easily mobilize around 50 different banks and financing MFIs to give loans, financing loans on an average of euro 1,000 to euro 2,000 per entrepreneur, to approximately, I think, if I'm not mistaken, around 1,500 of such entrepreneurs during this project lifespan. And also we mobilized the local financing guys who were very much in good touch with the local financing institutions, so as to hasten the process. So the basic idea is that it is not a question of inventing a new mechanism to facilitate the process, but just to take the existing process and give and sharpen it, so that we get quick results in a very limited time with limited resources.
That's great. Thank you very much. This is also a question that we can address directly to Matthew, of course, who would represent the investor standpoint. Matthew, can I ask you to also comment on this? And yeah, as you know, most of our grant projects are quite small, or while they do have scale up in mind, they of course start, from an investor standpoint, and you have also mentioned this this kind of scale problem at the local level. And yeah, what are recommendations from you as someone with an investor's perspective to projects starting out and seeking finance?
Again, one thing I would disagree with the previous speaker is that off-the-shelf solutions don't work here. The way that if this was a microfinance project, I would say potentially yes. But when we start to think about rethinking agri-food systems, specifically with circular economic and carbon and environmental inputs necessary, then we compound that with a just transition. What we're talking about is, how do we make money the servant of the project, not the project the servant of the master, of the bank. So one of the things that projects need to keep in mind is that the biggest cost you're going to have is the administration of those finances. Scale is a very tricky thing to achieve. If you're a smallholder farmer, your capital requirements are going to be significantly different than your capital requirements are for an operating company. If you're a smallholder farmer, you want to be leveraging your relationships with multilaterals as well as grant funded projects as much as possible. They have the budget, they have the capabilities of absorbing the risk, which is to say any financial risk and the startup risk required in order to provide you with the types of funding that you require. If you're working with small farmers, one of the things that you need to take into consideration is that any type of debt that you're taking on. When you're going to any type of lender, do they understand the concept of a circular economy food system? Do they understand what you're trying to achieve in terms of reaching UN goals in the sector? Are they going to work with you when you come up against the two big G's, God and government? Are they going to be able to? Is the debt? Is it going to be drawn from your profit margin, or is it going to be drawn from your top line, your revenue? Is it going to be revenue light type financing? There's a lot of resources available and are increasingly coming online that will help guide you through that process, the conversation with the lender. This is specifically speaking towards smallholders. To the groups in the call that are running projects right now, what I'd say is there's an increasingly number of examples online. World Resource Institute, as well as in Peru, has done a lot of interesting things. The Midwest of America has done really interesting vehicles that have allowed for the creation of low-risk loans to help facilitate farmers make that leap, make the transition from conventional across towards sustainable regenerative type farming. This is the mandate of now groups such as ourselves to be able to come in and absorb that risk so that we can help small farmers make that transition. It's the creativity that's required right now in investors is a lot on the pull through. So how are we creating those market linkages? This is really tricky stuff. So there is a growing demand for the types of off-farm income, or the types of commodities that are being produced by natural capital. Making that market is very expensive. It's a lot of risk. It's up to us to absorb that risk so that we can help our constituents or our clients make that transition over. Now that's with the small farmers. If you're looking at operating companies or supply chains, it's a totally different mechanism required. But again, these financial mechanisms need to take into consideration the longer term investment approach that's required in order to allow for stakeholders to maintain their commitment to the circular economy, not to their LPs. And that's going to take a tremendous amount of advocacy on our part towards the LPs, the limited partners. These are anyone who's coming in from a traditional financing sector who have their preconceived notions about return on investment, hurdle rates, cost of capital, risk, these types of things. These are not off-the-shelf solutions. These are solutions that have been designed for public markets, specifically coming out of New York, that are going to price assets in the circular economy at the same price as an IBM stock, which is just fundamentally wrong. This comes down to the crutch of the solution, crutch of the problem that we're facing in regeneration and carbon regeneration right now. We are forced to compete for capital at the same rates as IBM are. And so that right there is any type of work that we're doing in the space needs to be able to break that down. So there's a lot of advocacy that's required for there. Anyways, I'll pause there. That's a very long-winded response to a very seemingly simple but very complex question. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I think what this hints to is really the playing field that we are all active in. And the problems that result maybe from a linear understanding and a limitless growth understanding of a basically finite world and finite resources, and how in this particular situation circularity is actually a disadvantage because it's just not interpreted in a realistic perspective of the system. And maybe let me come back to the circular economy dimensions that my team leader Zenaida referred to earlier. With regards to the different dimensions, the circular strategies, innovation, life cycle stages and enablers. I think we've heard really interesting examples today. And I think we have actually ticked all of the sub-dimensions as well. And of course, these are not separate from each other, but they are linked with each other and really feed each other. And what I would like to strengthen again, and this was also mentioned by our colleague from the European Union, is that for circular economy to thrive, what we really need is not tinkering around the edges, but a systemic perspective and a systemic understanding of also where the shifts in the system need to be. And I think, yeah, Matthew, with your comments also on the sort of playing field that also our grants are active on, and where they have to face off with business models that are linear, but in their own way, just at the moment more profitable. I think this kind of links it very nicely together. I think other aspects that have come up today quite a lot is that there needs to be learning and there need to be partnerships across sectors and also across communities of knowledge and of of action, and regeneration also as a concept as introduced by James in his opening words, really needs to be put at the center for the circular economy to really take hold and to make sense in a sort of system shift, so that there's the competition with linear models kind of fades away, where through enablers, education, behavioral change, public policy, and also market shift, we see a new system emerging that does not have to compete, at least not financially, on the same level with linear models, which are at the moment just way too profitable to leave behind. Yeah, and with that, I would like to congratulate all our grants participants who have presented today, and I think these were really inspiring examples of where systemic thinking can lead us. And I hope from the perspective of the Switch Asia SCP facility that we will continue the exchange on these topics and bring forward these as examples for a new type of model and a new type of economy that helps to bring about a more sustainable system. So thank you very much to all contributors, and yes, we will have the recording available in a little bit, and we will also post on social media with the key messages from our speakers. So please follow us on Facebook and on Twitter if you're interested in getting the newest developments from our side. And thank you very much. And let's reconnect on all of this very soon.
Thank you, Cosima. And we can now close the webinar. In 1 hour, everyone will receive the recording. Thank you very much.
Thank you.